this is Jordan Machado, aspiring biologist and hopefully a future herpetologist here at Snakeful Grace, and today we're going to be covering whether you should get a baby hognose or an adult as your first hognose. Let's start with babies. Some of the best parts about having a little baby is that you actually get to watch it grow. You get to see a tiny little noodle like that grow into a beautiful big noodle like this. They'll have really adorable, vibrant colors, and it's really fun to just kind of watch their personality shape. It also gives them a lot of time to get used to you and the environment that they're going to be growing in. However, you always need to be sure that you trust and you do a lot of research on who you're getting your baby from, because babies are a lot more likely to possibly be sold or get a little finicky or stressed and not really thrive. And unfortunately, that is something that just happens with reptiles in general. Not every single reptile is going to make it. And when you start with a baby, that's kind of a risk that you are taking. You're taking that risk that there's always a possibility they might just be a failure to thrive, regardless of if you do absolutely everything okay. A really good thing about babies, though, is that because they're still so young and they're kind of learning about what's going on in the world, they are able to adapt to new environments really well. So that lets them grow up in your house and kind of just get used to what your normal is. And I'll explain why that's so important when I start talking about adults. What about starting out with an adult? Well, we've got some amazing pros. One, if they're an adult, they've been pretty established. That means they've got a consistent eating record. They are good to go. They're also closer to breeding age. So if you plan on breeding, if you get an adult, it's probably even a proven adult at this point. So you'll be able to kind of kickstart your breeding career a lot sooner. And they're pretty much past the failure to thrive age because they have already made it into adulthood. So most of the times, if they've made it to adulthood, they're going to be nice, healthy, good to go, good eaters, and they have a more consistent track record. However, you don't really get to watch them grow. And you also still need to be careful who you get them from, because sometimes people might just be selling young proven breeders that were actually retired breeders. And there's nothing wrong with a retired breeder, but chances are you won't really be able to breed them that much because they're going to be a little more middle-aged. And they can make absolutely amazing pets. However, because they are adults and they've kind of already grown up and been used to being in a certain environment, that can lead to adults having a harder time adapting to new places. And unfortunately, that is a thing that a lot of people don't talk about, is that when you start with an adult hognose, not all of them adapt really well or can cope with the stress of being shipped when they've kind of already been used to their whole life. In fact, wild snakes have a hard time surviving if you even relocate them 150 feet away from where you found them. Another thing to consider too is a price difference. Babies will pretty much always be significantly cheaper than adults, just because you haven't had to go through the time of raising them up. Additionally, breeder females will be a lot more expensive than baby females or even subadult females, because that means they're already producing. So I usually don't trust a breeder female for less than $1,000, because generally, if it's less than $1,000, there might be something wrong with it. There's a reason they're getting rid of it. For a pet, that's totally fine. But if you plan on breeding, definitely take that into consideration, because normal babies go for, right now, 2023, about like between $200 and $300. Your average hognose clutch is going to be between, let's say, conservatively, 8 to 15 eggs. If we just go ahead and multiply that, you can see that that is worth more than that female just on her own. So why would you be selling a good breeder for $500? And you always need to be careful, because people will be trying to get rid of sick animals for a very cheap, quick turnaround. They'll be trying to get a really quick turnaround, and they don't really consider if they're actually going to give you the snake either. Scams? Definitely be careful and wary of anyone selling you a really cheap breeder-sized female, because chances are there's either something wrong or it doesn't exist. And another really important thing too to consider when getting an adult is, why is someone selling an adult? Because unfortunately, not everybody out there is honest. It could be a breeding size female that just might be infertile, and someone's just trying to kind of make a quick buck, get it out, and not have to deal with the consequences anymore. Additionally, there is like the possibility of maybe they were fed really, really bad quality food their whole lives, or maybe they were fed scented, or maybe they were actually really hard to get started and they have consistent off periods of not really wanting to eat, and not every breeder is going to actually tell you that. There's a lot of unknown history to getting an adult if you don't know who you're getting them from, and that can be really, really scary, especially if they have a disease that might be running rampant in someone's collection, and you don't know how many collections that they might have gone through by the time they get to you. Might be too late. So at the end of the day, whether you should get a baby or an adult really does depend. Additionally, you kind of need to remember that babies will look a little bit different than adults, because think of it like an image, same image, but if you stretch it out, it's going to lose a little bit of that resolution. Some babies look even nicer as adults. Others look a little more faded just because their scales got bigger. But they are both still absolutely beautiful, and honestly, you can have a great time starting with a baby or an adult. Just depends on what works for you. Hey, keep it snakeful. Excuse me, ma'am. As close to where you can as possible. She's got really nice saturation on her back. They're not great at holding on.
Baba Didi?
But size difference in the head.
Little baby.
One hand, one hand. I can still hold both with one hand.
Nice.